how do we actually do something about data minimization and retention? The first thing every organization has really to understand is where is our data and what data do we have? It might be in structured form in some applications, in some databases. I bet most of you have a lot of unstructured data in emails, in files, on shares, or in your basement, in your paper archive or whatever that is. And to start the whole activity of actually minimizing the data, retaining it or deleting it means doing an inventory of all of that. The records of processing activities of a major privacy program and a requirement under many modern privacy regulation help us to do that, because that actually forces us to come up with an understanding what processes tackle what kind of data. But ultimately, it's an inventory of the databases, of the applications, etc. The data lineage thing, that is to understand the data flow. Where does our data come from? How do people, individuals, actually provide their data to an organization? How does it flow through the systems? Where does it go to vendors, for example, to clients, etc.? That is that topic that we also need to understand. So, for example, if we decide, well, we don't need an attribute or we want to delete some data, it's not enough to just delete it in one system. We actually need to ensure it's deleted in the upstream and downstream system all the way through. Now, when talking about data deletion, and that is the point around these schedules, it's all great that we talk about retention schedules here, but how do we get to retention schedules, especially if it's more than 5 different sets of data in a global organization? Well, essentially, in that area, we need to understand what are the legal requirements. And there are apparently some laws, usually in the area of financial data, where almost every country has rules, how long to keep accounting information, stuff like that. But for most data point, it's a bit a more gray area where we need to reach out to external guidance or come up with a business justification and a combination of both. And those retention schedules can actually be acquired externally. There are a bunch of companies out there where we can buy retention schedules that are not written in stone. Most of the time they will say, oh, you can go 1 year, 2 years based on certain criteria, etc. But I find those extremely helpful to actually get at least a first understanding where to go with the actual retention periods.
Yeah, it's amazing how complicated this can be, particularly when you're looking at multiple jurisdictions, and particularly when you're looking at multiple jurisdictions across the EU, because we do see, for employment data, for example, widely varying degrees of not only retention periods themselves, but also even content that can be collected and maintained in the short term. It absolutely varies across sort of within country as well as across country. And so I think the idea of having these schedules available for purchase, or tools like Nymity, where you can conduct the research if there is a smaller subset of regions that you guys are looking into, is something really to keep in mind. Don't make the assumption that because you know a retention period, that you might know all of the retention periods that apply, even if it's the exact same type of data. I'm thinking off the top of my head, I've had several clients stub their toes when it comes to how long they can keep job application data. So lots of organizations want to have a repository of job applicants. You've got an open position, you get a ton of fantastic candidates. Only one person can be hired now, but you want to keep those for later. There are rules around how long organizations can keep it, and so it is incredibly important to be dialed in on this from not only a minimization, but again, also from just a retention perspective. And so then flipping the practical implementation to the other side of the house, we can also start to think about how this is going to play in with respect to your privacy notices. So one of the things that we've always known, as those of us who've been doing this for a while know, is that when GDPR became codified 2018, there was a tremendous need for organizations to really overhaul their website privacy statements. What was suitable before we had GDPR be formal, and when it was only a directive, now is a requirement, and something that everyone on the call should be aware of who's got that CCPA exposure is that with CPRA's updates, it is actually now incumbent upon organizations to post their retention periods within the privacy notices as well. So really, there's a requirement to increase on the transparency side. And that's an easy, low-hanging fruit type of thing for everyone to not only see, but to really need to sort of put pedal to the metal if you haven't made those necessary updates yet. And of course, the vendor contract. So everyone should have a nice vendor data processing agreement in place that covers responsibilities under not only data protection, like having proper security, but also the need to facilitate and assist with data subject rights. Absolutely minimization, retention, and importantly, thinking about how once your organization has shared your data with external vendors, how are you going to approach that end of life relationship? Are you going to make it incumbent upon the vendor to destroy the data that you've shared with them? If that's the case, make sure it's in the contract, but also consider how you're going to audit and confirm that that happened. And then the flip side is that if you intend to receive it back from that vendor at the end of the relationship, how is it that you're also going to verify that everything has been returned? And then again, the audit and monitoring, so that goes right into it.